Hey, welcome to this episode of The Complete Advisor. Super excited that you're here. We're going to have a conversation about connecting. How do you connect? Can you make a connection with a prospect before they come into your office? Can you make a connection with, can you strengthen connections with existing clients without speaking to them or having them sitting in your office? That's what we're going to have a conversation about with David Treece. David does an amazing job with his blog, and he's going to walk us through how he does that, literally from how he started, how he refined it, to how he works his process. Is it something for you? Maybe, maybe not, but I do know that you're going to find it very interesting. Let's take a listen. There are a ton of people that write blogs.
Yep.
And I've seen this, and in fact, sometimes what's kind of funny is if you're ever out on, say, LinkedIn and you see the same article like 6 times because you're with
Right.
other people.
Right.
But you have a blog that's very personal.
Yes.
And you refer to, and it's crazy, we were talking before we recorded. David, we actually started, by the way. I know a lot about you. This is the first time we met in person.
Yes.
And yet I know some great stories. I know the coyote story. That one resonated. I've got to meet your daughters. I know about your dog, your wife, biking,
Yes.
and I know that you like Subarus too.
Yes.
So one of the things that I love is David Treece. You have an amazing newsletter / blog that you put out.
Thank you.
And what I love about it, what I wanted to talk to you about today was really kind of blogging, newslettering with personality.
Yeah.
And, a lot of people don't do that. And so what I wanted to dive right into, of course, you're on the podcast, which means you have a successful practice.
Thank you.
And beautiful website too, by the way.
Thank you.
And so I wanted to talk to you about that writing. Have you always been a writer?
Yeah. So it was 9th or 10th grade. I had a teacher, an English teacher, and we had to have a journal. And one of the assignments, this is my first remembrance of enjoying writing. I had a journal, and one of the classes was we were graded on whether we would write that whole period. She said she didn't care what we wrote. We just had to write that whole period. And I did that and had no problem with it. And I was like, I really enjoy this. And so I've developed a enjoyment of writing since then. And it has been something that I find that I really enjoy. It's one of the most enjoyable things I do in my business, I feel like. And it's a way to build credibility and to allow people that might not trust you. You can go to Google and see different studies about trust being at an all-time low. And so people now come into situations skeptical where they might not have in years past. And so it's a way to build trust, and it's also something where it allows you just to stay in front of people, so it helps you be in the top of mind too. And what I found is the more vulnerable you get with the content you share, the more people enjoy it. And so I routinely get comments, thankfully, of clients and people that aren't even clients that subscribe to it saying that how much they enjoy it. Just had a conversation with a client last week on that.
Does it throw you that when you meet somebody and they know stuff about you? Like, I know, how did the bike ride? I want to ask you about the bike ride.
Well,
the race.
What happens though is when they come in, they feel like they already know you, and so you don't have to spend 30 minutes having small talk with them. So it's a way almost to be more efficient with your time because they've already know who you are. You're just talking about them as opposed to having to talk about yourself because they're seeing what's going on every week. I try to do it very religiously. I've experimented with different times to send it out. But every Wednesday morning at 5:30 in the morning, it's in their inbox. And so it's almost like you can get people trained to be ready for it. I've got emails that I read every morning from newsletters and stuff, and I look forward to getting it. So it's the same kind of thinking.
Let me ask you this. Okay, so how long have you been doing it?
I've been writing newsletters. I've had a lot of iterations, and it's evolved quite a bit, but it's been over 10 years I've been writing them.
Oh, holy smokes.
Yeah.
Is that longer than you've been in practice, or about when you started in practice?
I got licensed originally about 12 years ago.
Okay.
Yeah. So it took different iterations, and I also find, I read a lot about how to do it, you know, as far as business books and whatnot. And so when you're being general, you don't get as good of results as if you're specific and And so I've kind of created a model that I follow. But what I've also found is I really enjoy reading. And I find that when I'm consistently reading books and so forth, that it's a lot easier to write. If I go through a season of not really reading, it's a lot harder to write for some reason. I don't know what the correlation psychology-wise is, but that's been my experience.
This actually makes you probably one of the earliest versions of what would be a modern influencer.
Maybe, I don't know.
Brand, almost like a brand. I will. I'm going to say it. I like it. It's a great newsletter. So when you decided to do it, what were you, and you're going to have to think back now because it is a little ways, but what were you expecting when you decided to commit to doing this? Because you did have to commit to it because you said you're doing it once a week.
Yes.
So this is a two-parter. What were you expecting when you decided to do it?
Yeah.
And then did it end up being that, or what did it end up being?
I think it's like a lot of things. The lower expectations you have, the happier you are.
Yep.
When I first started writing it, it was one of those things, and I would be embarrassed for you to see some of that stuff, but it was almost like trying to show clients how smart I was about how I knew about all these finance things. And I was telling someone earlier today, I think that's what clients that are hiring you hire you to do. So I always try to wrap it in a lot of the times, not all the time, to something that's going on with current events and make it applicable to that. But that is, I just use it as not necessarily as getting business, but retaining business and showing people that are in my funnel how we work and the authentic part of it.
I think a lot of advisors will do, they'll do the family Christmas card.
Yeah.
And, nice pet, then a beautiful picture with the family, because people do want to know more about you, but so many advisors just stop there.
Yes.
And so introducing this, so walk us through, let's walk through your process. So you said it goes out every Wednesday at 5:30.
Yes.
So when does the process start?
Right. So the process starts, I'm always writing it. If I'm prepared, I'm always kind of thinking about what I want to write for the next week.
Yeah.
And so it typically starts on Monday morning. And so that's always on my to-do list to write it. I do use a professional editor. So I'm pretty good with the grammar and stuff, but you're not, unless you scrutinize over it and read it 7 to 10 times, you're not going to catch everything because it's what you've written. So it's much more efficient to send it to an editor. So if I'm at 1,000 words, or 750 to 1,000 words, which is normally where it's at, it's costing me $14, $15 a week for him to edit it. He sends
that's not bad at all.
He sends it back corrected, and then hopefully, in an ideal world, I'm setting it up in Constant Contact that Monday, but by Tuesday it's in there. And then this is maybe funny, but on Tuesday nights, I ask my wife to finalize it and to read it. So every Tuesday night she reads it just to see if we missed any errors and stuff. And I've gone through a couple iterations of trying to edit it myself, and I just found that it can consistently be more professional using the editor. So I've used him for a number of years. But yeah, what I found too is I at first was not using any pictures, and so I don't know about you, but when I get an email with no pictures, it's a lot easier to click off of it than if there's one where you see the top of the picture. If you scroll down a little bit more, you can read what it is. And so I just I look for articles, whether it's somebody that's lived to 105 years old and how they did that, and I might talk about that.
I read that one.
Yeah, and stuff like that. There was the first one where I figured out the picture was a couple years ago. This girl had survived like a horrific automobile accident, and she had this overcoming feel-good type story, and I put a picture of her in the newsletter. And I noticed that more people were clicking on it and so forth and reading it. And then I started thinking, we have little kids, and every day we're taking pictures of them, and people love kids, So I started sharing more of that, and people love that. And so they come in and they actually do similar to what you're talking about and ask how the kids are and stuff without me prompting them and stuff. But I mean, I've got pictures of my family in my office to kind of show who I am too, which is helpful. But yeah, does that answer your question?
Yeah. So how do you pick your topics? So for those people that haven't read your newsletter, you do a great job. It is like Malcolm Gladwellian, if you will. If listeners probably know who that is, but
I think you're being too generous.
That's it. But it's like that because you take just like Malcolm Gladwell, you'll take a family topic, a family a story, and then you'll weave that into something that's going on in the market or finance-wise.
Right.
And you do that nice job of this and bringing it together. So talk about, do you have a notepad that has like ideas all sketched out?
Yeah, I use my iPhone, my notepad on my iPhone, so I'm always, and when I think of something, and I always hate when I'm somewhere where I can't take a note on it and I forget it. So I do that. I wasn't always the best at linking the story with what I was talking about, and so it's one of these things too that if you're consistent with it, it gets easier.
Sure.
And so if you take a break from it, it gets a lot harder to do it. But when you're in that repetition of doing it consistently, it's way easier. And so I'm always thinking about ideas. I find driving is where I get a lot of good ideas, and when I'm cycling, when I can't use technology, that's when I get a lot of good ideas. When I'm
let the brain go.
Yes, that's very helpful. So any kind of exercising where you can't use technology is good for that.
That's fantastic. See, it works so well, the family stories, that I need to know what happened.
Yeah.
Is that coyote still around the
We haven't seen him again. I was just telling my wife, I was like, how many years do you think I can put pictures of the girls in the newsletter before they have a problem with that? And so we were trying to think when they get to be a little bit older and know what's going on, they might object to that. So
that'll be about 13.
Yeah.
So let me ask you a question about that. So how was your wife Mallory, again, something I know because I read your newsletter and got to know you that way. Was she on board with pictures and sharing stories? And
so that's part of the approval process where she gets veto if I'm putting a picture in she doesn't like. But another helpful thing, the iPhone's awesome with the camera, so you can get really quality photos with the iPhone now. But she was an art teacher for a number of years, and so she's very good with taking pics. So a lot of the pics in the newsletter are from her taking them and sending them to me. But she also likes to get professional photos done a lot. And so we'll always get a Christmas card and stuff like that. And you can repurpose a lot of those professional pictures for your newsletter, which is awesome too. And so that's helpful. But she's been pretty good with it. She hasn't given me too much kickback. Sometimes when I don't put as flattering a picture on there, I got in trouble a few times. So that's why she gets the Tuesday night veto power.
That's good. That's good to think of.
Yeah.
So let me ask you this question. So, a lot of advisors don't get the opportunity to think about personal development. And so Jay, who you met, the producer of the show, and I were talking about, we were looking through some different topics that you had, and we got onto the conversation about personal development. And what is the writing? What has it given to you?
In 2016, 2017, I was just, life has a way of getting down on you, and it can get very negative. And so I had a friend recommend that I start listening to Zig Ziglar, the guy that's passed away, motivational guy now, but he has tons of audio you can find on the internet. And I think it's very important, especially in our business, to encourage yourself. Ziglar used to say that the fuel on which the fuel on which hope runs on, I'm botching it now. But he was very big on encouraging yourself, and doing that. And so, I think especially with a lot of the things going on in our country and so forth that can be negative, and a lot of retired folks are turning on the TV and seeing this, and it can get kind of toxic. And personal development, keeping your mindset right, is huge with being happy in life. And so that's really helped me a lot. It's helped me in my business, and anything you do, you can do better with a better attitude. And so it's always good to check that. So I love personal development stuff.
I like that. What? So you mentioned that you are able to track. What kind of trends have you seen as far as open rates or?
So I don't know if this is accurate, but Constant Contact says I get about a 40% open rate.
That's incredible.
On my newsletters, which is great. And so, I mean, when you look at the metrics, if you're like me, you want to look at who unsubscribed first, So the more I got the attitude that I'm not really too worried about that, the easier it was, because you can fixate on the 5 people that unsubscribe one week, but that is not the important thing. It's the people that did open it, and the people that are opening it every week. And so I used to really scrutinize that stuff, and now I get an email after the fact from Constant Contact, and I take a cursory view of it and try to just move on. Yeah, because it's not worth really thinking about.
Any advice for any aspiring authors out there to?
Yeah, it's I would just develop a plan for what you want to do, and then I think even writing. I mean, I was trying to stick at 500 words, and so it doesn't have to be overwhelming. So, and it doesn't have to be something that is challenging to write about. And also, when you start reading about it, there's a lot of content on keeping the words simple. You're talking about vocabulary and stuff, which is great, but I try to keep it on a very 8th or 9th grade reading level to make it really easy. I think the news is written on a lower grade level than that. And so I don't think it really even matters. I mean, we have quite a few very educated clients, and they're used to reading stuff that's not even that's similar to that. So if they're having to think about words and what they mean, you're losing them. And so if they have to think about that, so I keep it very simple. But you could start out with something like just trying to write 250 words,
Is that about a paragraph or two?
Yeah, a couple paragraphs.
Okay.
500 words, I think, is typically about a page on a Word document.
All right.
And so give or take. But it doesn't have to be overwhelming, and just think about cool things you can take a picture of. It doesn't. This week I didn't put any family pictures. So also too, I typically try to wrap it back around to the business, but this week I just wrote it about a book I was reading. So if you're doing something, just write about it, and what your takeaways were from it. And it's always cool, like you can, and the other thing too is you don't have to constantly recreate stuff. You just rewrite it, and by the time a year or two goes by, the people that have read it the first time have forgotten about it, and you can reuse it, And so I've done that a lot with cycling and so forth when analogizing things with that. And so people don't mind hearing the same stories. We are conditioned, or I don't know what the right word is, but we think in story format. People resonate with us in story format, and so that's what I would say to that.
I love it. I think that if you're an advisor out there, you should really consider this, because it's it serves so many functions. It helps your clients get to know you better, but not just, like you were saying, not just from a business angle. It's something for your soul too.
Right.
It's fantastic. Well, David, thanks so much for being on. Appreciate you sharing.
Yes, thank you. Appreciate it.
And for everybody else, I got to throw this in here, of course. If you want to keep up with the latest episodes, don't forget to hit that subscribe button. Biggest reason, that way when we drop a new episode, you get the little notice that there's something sitting out there. And then, of course, you can watch us on YouTube, you can watch us on Apple, Spotify, or you can just listen wherever you find your podcast. So, Dave, thanks for being here, man.
Thank you.